99% of people that use Claude Code don't use it to its full potential. They don't have the right systems and frameworks in place to get Claude Code to generate something that's 50% there to 100% every single time. And this is because most users just give Claude a prompt and let it guide them to the outcome, rather than actually just setting up the right environment to get to the exact outcome that they're looking for in just a fraction of the time. The way that I personally use Claude Code is that I plan the entire session ahead of time, and I make sure to go over alternative solutions, trade-offs, edge cases, and security vulnerabilities, including much more before I actually ship anything. For those of you that are new to the channel, my name is Luca. I'm the founder and CEO of Nairon AI, and in this video, I'm going to take you through the 3 things that have drastically improved my output with Claude Code. Let's dive into it. So I'm in my IDE right here. I love to use Superset, which essentially allows me to run multiple Claude Code sessions at the same time, but have versions of my code base running in something that are called work trees, which essentially are like copies of your code base and allow different agents to work on different copies of the code base to run different tasks, or to fulfill different tasks. And the reason why I mention this is because context is actually what separates the beginner Claude Code user from the expert Claude Code user. So other than work trees, we'll get to that in a separate video, it's really important for you to understand what context you're giving Claude Code. And there's a couple of ways that we can do what we call context engineering. One of them is to have a very good understanding of the actual context that's in your code base itself. So if I ask Claude Code a very simple question like, what is this code base about? We can essentially see that Claude Code has answered that this is just a very simple project with a simple file that's a dashboard running multiple agents. What's really cool here is that every session starts off with a Claude MD file or a agents MD file. And here you can see my Claude MD file. So I have a little bit of information on what this project is about, what conventions we like to use and what conventions we don't like to use, how exactly Claude Code should work in this project. And then the most important thing is a skill index. So one of the things that beginners actually miss out on is that they install like a bunch of skills onto Claude Code, but they don't actually invoke the skills or allow Claude to know when to invoke a skill. And so invoking a skill is as easy as just going /bug and asking Claude to run the skill. And as you can see, Claude runs the skill. And where a lot of people mess up is that they assume that Claude would just run the skills that they have, right? The 300 skills that they install into their code base. The problem is that Claude, when it has so many skills, it doesn't know when it actually needs to invoke the skills. And so what I love to do is I love to set up the skill index to actually allow Claude to know what skills it should use and when exactly it should use. Now, one of my favorite skills, and this is a custom skill that I built called the /PRS skill, and then a variant of it called the /PRC skill. PRS stands for problem, root cause, and solution. It's essentially me asking Claude to take its long session that I've had so far and to condense it into bulletin points on what it identifies in simple layman's term as the problem, what it thinks and what it believes from its investigation to be the root cause, and then what it infers to be the solution. And so now let's try this out. If I just simply tell Claude that the badges are wrong, it will go ahead and it'll do its investigation. And a lot of people find themselves here once there's a bug that comes in. As you can see here, it invokes the bug skill because it's in our skill index. It'll go through the code base. It'll sort of do its analysis of what's wrong and everything. Problem is that it won't really condense the final outcome in a format that you will be able to very quickly identify. Is it actually following the problem that I've notated? Is it actually identifying what the root problem is? And is the solution actually the right solution? So after Claude runs its analysis, I like to ask it the /PRS skill, and this is what it would look like. It'll give me in very simple bulletin points what the problem is. At this point, I ask myself, did Claude really understand the problem that I've given it? In this case, was the badge actually a wrong badge? It actually notated that it was set to offline instead of it being online. When it looked at the root cause, it identified that it was because there is no actual live data feed for each user. That makes sense. And so if we look at the solution, Claude Code actually figured out that because the data was actually hard-coded, the right solution is to actually query where the data is coming from. And it actually has an open-ended question for me that I need to answer. And that leads me to the final point, which is my favorite concept called loop engineering. Now, most people here would essentially just tell it, yeah, that's the right solution, go ahead and do it. What I like to do is to engineer a loop which means to set up a system where I can give Claude the direction that I want it to go in, set the parameters of how it can test whether its solution is correct or not. If it goes into different directions that I might not agree with, how do I loop back to the right direction? And then how do I keep allowing it to run in the right direction to finally get to the outcome that I want it to get to? And I will do it through something called /goal, which essentially is a feature that Claude Code built out for us to be able to give it a condition, a way to test against that condition, and to allow it to run almost indefinitely until it gets to that goal. Now, we need to be a little bit more specific on when this is actually completed. And so I like to use a done when condition, which essentially I just put in all of the criteria that essentially marks this as done. And now the mechanism. This is perhaps the most important piece where a lot of beginners fail. We need to give Claude Code the specific mechanism that it can run to know if it achieved its implementation. In this case, use the agent browser tool to write the filter in its own function and keep checking it until it's done. I'll always add a little line to keep fixing and running until this passes. And if we click enter, we can see here that the goal is active, and this will run until the agent actually achieves the objective. So that pretty much covers everything I do on a day-to-day basis with Claude Code. If you got value out of this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you're running a business doing anywhere from $3 to $10 million a year, you can book an AI opportunity audit with myself and my team. That's the first link in the description below. I'll see you in the next one.